Hey, just happen to have 2 pounds of raisins just lying around? Let's turn that into raisin wine. Hi, I'm Charles and welcome to DIY Fermentation, your site for doing fermentation on a shoestring budget. All right, to make our raisin wines, of course, we're going to need raisins. Up to 2 pounds of raisins will do it. We're going to be using a Red Star Premier Classique, formerly known as Moncherette, wine yeast. It's good up to an AVB of about 13% before it stops working. Tea bag for tannin. We're going to be using a peptic enzyme. We're going to be using half a lemon for our acid blend. We're going to be using approximately 4 cups of sugar, straining bags if you've got them, up to 1 gallon or 4 liters of water, something to do primary fermentation in, jug, jar, carboy, demijohn, take your pick, something to do secondary fermentation in, airlock with stopper, and hydrometer or hydrometer and beaker to determine our AVB levels, or our alcohol by volume levels. All of these ingredients you will find in the comments section, which will include both the imperial measurements and the metric measurements as well. All right, at this point, we want to go ahead and start boiling our water. I'm going to pour off a little bit of our water for our tea bag tannin mixture, and the rest of our water can go in the pot. Now, for those of you who've been watching me slave over a hot stove in my previous videos, you would have noticed that I'm not using the same pot that I normally would use, because that pot is still currently in use, making my next video. That should be ready next week. So I'm using my next biggest pot. Well, actually, my biggest pot. I mean, either way, it's going to work because all we're going to do is just boil some water. Now that our water has come to a nice rolling boil, let's go ahead and turn the heat off there. And as far as our water for our tea mixture, let's go ahead and drop in our tea bag there. When at this point, go ahead and add our sugar. And go ahead and incorporate that. Okay, I think our tannin mixture is strong enough. We just go ahead and pour that in. And now we're going to wait for it to come down to room temperature. We've let our peptic enzyme set for the past, well, actually overnight. And before we move on to the final step, let's take a gravity reading so we know where we stand. And one more should do it. There we go. Give it a little swirl. And it looks like we've got a gravity reading of 1.1. Pretty close. 1.18. It's pretty high. Now would also be a good time for us to go ahead and add our lemon juice, which is our acid blend substitute. We now want to take our 1/4 teaspoon of yeast and just go ahead and just sprinkle that around. And if necessary, just give it a little swirl. And put our cap on. Nice and tight. Well, that's all there is to it. We've now got our first batch of raisin wine in the works. All we need to do from this point on is just give it a stir once a day for the next 7 days. And then let it stay in the primary fermenter for another 7 days before we rack it into our secondary. That'll give more of a chance to some of the heavier yeast to settle down to the bottom. Keep it in a place that's nice, cool, and dark for that 7-day period. Rack it every 4 to 6 weeks. And once again, at the end of 1 year period, we'll be sipping on some raisin wine.